All right, so let's figure out how to set up ACES CG in Arnold for Cinema 4D. All right, here we are. We have a simple scene. We've got a car, got an HDRI, some area lights that we'll turn on a little bit later. This is a typical workflow. There's no ACES going on here. We're going to start from scratch. So I've got the IPR going. We are using Arnold GPU, which I highly recommend checking that out. Still in beta, but hopefully will be released soon. All right, first thing we need to do is get all of our ACES files off the internet. So the best way to do that is going to be follow the link that I'm going to put down below. And that link's going to take you to the ImageWorks OpenColor IO configs, which is what we're going to use to load ACES into Arnold. All right, so getting to this page, all you need to do is click on clone or download and download the zip. And then from there, you want to extract the contents to a directory on your system that everybody can see. And it's going to just drop it right here. And you can see it's got all the different ACES versions. 103 is what we're going to be using. And each one of them has a OpenColor IO config file, which is what we're going to use to load into Arnold here. All right, so once that's extracted and put on your hard drive, you're good to go to the next step. Next thing we need to do is open up Arnold render settings. And we're going to jump down into the color manager in the main tab here. And we're going to choose OpenColor IO. That's how we're going to get ACES to come into Arnold here. You're going to probably see it, and it's going to look something like this. You're going to open up this config. It's not going to have anything loaded. And then the sRGB color space will be set to narrow. And the render color space will be set to auto on both of these actually. So let's navigate to where that 103 file is. I've already got it right here. So we would basically open up our configs master, go into ACES 103, and right here is the OpenColor IO config file. Double click that. All right, that's going to load it in. Now we need to tell it, we need to set the sRGB color space narrow and the render color space linear. So sRGB color space narrow is basically whatever. It's going to be the default color space that a texture gets loaded in. Like if you don't touch it and you set the color space to auto, it's going to automatically default to this. So we're going to choose utility sRGB texture because that's going to take an sRGB 8-bit texture and put it into ACES. And for the render color space, it's pretty obvious we are going to use ACES CG. That is the color space that we're going to be rendering in. So with that set up, it's time to now move on to the IPR session. The IPR window is going to look something like this. But if you notice at the top here under View Toolbar, there's a Show Color Space list. And you want to go ahead and choose the right color space here. And in our case, we're going to be choosing Output sRGB because we're going to be using the output device transform out to sRGB. You could choose Rec 709 as well. So immediately our render looks a lot different. I'm going to go ahead and stop the IPR so that we can do some work on our materials because we need to interpret all of our maps into ACES correctly. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to start with the Macbeth chart, and you can see it's just an image. Now the color space is set to auto, but I'm going to go ahead and change this myself just for purposes of this video. We could leave it as auto, and it's going to grab that first setting that we put into our render settings. But I'm going to choose it by hand. I'm going to choose Utility sRGB Texture because that's an sRGB texture map there. All right, I'm just going to keep driving down. Here's one that is going to be a little bit different. This one we're going to use for all of the non-data passes, meaning the bit maps that are driving, diffuse, and whatnot. That's going to get the same utility sRGB texture. And any data passes that would be considered linear, we're going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to grab both of these at the same time and choose the color space of utility raw. And right there. So what that's going to do is it's going to basically say I'm not doing any sort of input device transform on these textures. All right, let's keep walking through here. We're just going to start setting all these up. Here's an HDRI. HDRI needs to be set up a little bit differently. So an HDRI, let me just grab that. And that's going to be using utility. I believe it's utility linear sRGB right here. Boom. So that's going to give you the correct setting for an HDRI. Let's just keep walking down here. We've got this one's going into the normal. So this one's going to be utility raw. There we go. This one is nothing in there, nothing in there. Okay, so I'm just looking for anything. This is again going to be like a data thing, but that's a checkerboard, so that's not really a big deal. I'm just looking for any images, and I'm just going to interpret them correctly here. So that's going to be raw because that's going into the bump. This one is a color, so this one's going to be utility sRGB texture. And the body of the car, utility, sRGB texture, and glass, Arnold wheel. Okay, so that one also is going to be utility, sRGB texture. And once you kind of get the hang of this, it's really not that big of a deal, especially if you build your scene this way. It's not going to be a pain unless you're opening up an old scene and trying to convert it to ACES. And even then, it's really not so bad. All right, so this one's going to be sRGB texture, and then all of these are going to be raw. All right, platinum. Same goes for this guy. This is going to be utility sRGB texture. All the data passes or data images are going to be used as raw, and glass. Okay, so we are all set up now. That's it. We don't have to do anything else, and now we can just save this scene. I'm just going to save it as ACES done, ACES complete. Now, I have been getting into the habit of closing the scene and then reopening it. I have noticed that sometimes the color space will stick to sRGB sometimes. So let's go ahead and close all projects, and we're going to open up this scene. All right, there it is. Now, we've lost our color space. We need to go ahead and set that back up. sRGB is our output. And let's just give ourselves a little bit more room here in the IPR, and let's start up the IPR.